Hey, people, let me tell y'all a secret I ain't never told nobody in my life. That's why I grew up back here. It's changed a little bit due to development. You see more willows growing. But I grew up back here. My best friend, he was a little retarded, mainly because his mama would treat him like a baby. But, we enjoyed planes and trucks and equipment. We built engines. We liked racing. So we always hung out together. When I joined the Navy, we kind of drifted apart. And when I came back, he done moved to Arkansas. So I hadn't seen him in a while. And about 95, he showed up. He says, "Man, I've been living up with Arkansas, and I work for old Bill Clinton's brother." He says, we do a little kind of side jobs and shady stuff. He's kind of crime man. I said, we're looking for people like you. People got their own business, set their own hours, to do some jobs. I says, what kind of jobs? He says, just like driving trucks across the border at Mexico. And so this just struck me today when I was in the Mexican restaurant. I seen this come on the news. So that I might be put on Hillary's hit list. So, that last movie I did, it run too long. My computer jammed slap up. I couldn't even finish it. And I done got sidetracked. But this is going to be a good number 2. If you've seen number 1 in this series, it's going to be a good number 2. And I'll get back on to that other one real soon. So later on that night, the DEA hit. They stole about 80 plants. And I ain't seen my ex-friend since. So I don't know where that last movie cut off at, but this is where I was trying to get to. They call it the final plague on Egypt. Yet plague 1. But what it actually says is of danger ahead. Of danger ahead is what it says. And that danger ahead is a hurricane. But I never read this like this. I think there's somewhere in this chapter where it even says it calls it to turn. You see it again down here, and hurricane. They say it means and after that now. And so, most of the words I show you using the Bible, there'll all be a lot of one of them, and then the rest of them it's only used one time. But this is a word they split up very much. And you can see how all the common ones are all with the base word, ahar. There's many of them. And then when a prefix comes, there's less count. But yeah, it is used a lot. If you click on this word number, it'll show you all the places it's used, all the meanings. But it's spelt with the chet, and the chet is the H or the CH. And they'll say according, afterward. And that's coming from a hurry. If you're following behind the crowd, you're in a hurry trying to catch up, the butt end, follow. But it reads several ways depending on the marks, and everything starting with an A. One of these passes, you're going to read those words backwards. And so then it's a gyro, without any marks, just being it starts with an A. It's a gyro, to turn. When I first started reading, all the words that started with an A, they were hard to pronounce, and they didn't make sense, and so I read them backwards. I was reading this as gyro, and that's what a hurricane does. It's a gyro cane. And sometimes you see it, and they'll say it means turn or something like that. Words used often. Then the second thing I learned was this tack meant to read the next word backwards and forwards. And it was fitting together real well like that. And then the third thing I learned was the final M looked more like a S. And I didn't notice it when I was reading this old Bible because the final M is the same as the middle M. But when I started reading this new block style Hebrew, I noticed that it looked way more like an S. And so after several years of reading and figuring this out and all these points, I can come back to Genesis 1, and it says, in brash, it bear allies, at hissism is what hears. And so, in brash it bear allies, brash is strong, energetic. In brash it bear allies. At hissism is what hears. And this is what it's talking about. In brash it bear allies. That hissism is what hears. His allies, he brashly, energetically calls them on up, and they hissing. Hissism is what hears. So it's genius poetry written by the gods. It actually says a lot more than that in here. And that's what all these other little markings are. And you see, allies is spelled A-L-E-I-S instead of I-E-S. And it's where your word analyze come from. And this is also, the barrel eyes. And the barrel eyes is looking through a telescope. So the one that you've been taught was Satan, and all the qualities of Satan. That's who wrote the book. There's also the same word as Ramiel. The Ramiel, when you come back and read them A words backwards. The first fallen angel to help Satan, Ramiel. And so I'm not a religious man, and I only prayed one time in my life, and I prayed to the God, looking right here at this page. I seen it was going to be a mountain to learn how to read this. And so I prayed to the God that wrote this to help me learn to read it. I didn't know I was praying to Satan. Nobody ever told me Satan wrote the Bible. So that movie that cut off on me, I was reading about the Paro and looking like it say pro, P-R-O-E, and then life, the little E is ancient letter meaning life. In the most ancient languages, it was drawn as a picture as a man with his hands up, meaning alive, life. It was the letter E. And the Pharaoh is pro-life. And so, this talks about the plague of the locust is what they call it. And then the plague of darkness. And I believe the chapter before this is the plague of frogs. And it was here in Exodus 8 where it talked about the second plague of frogs. And I had to look up at this when I got to here where it's talking about in harden the Pharaoh's heart. And it's at, two B's or two V's or a V and a B. L-V-B-U-G-G-S. At love bugs. And I got to thinking about, love bugs. We got love bugs really bad down here. But I got to think, what love bugs is frogs love bugs. And that's why I had to look up to see what exactly this plague was. Because they'll give another word for frog. And you can see the XPRD in there, the speared. And, so they're talking about what hunted the frogs. They speared. They speared them. They speared them. And that's about the only way to eat frogs. You got to spear them. And so that caused me, to read the little more in them chapters. And this chapter 11 is a real short one, the one with the hurricane. And I was reading, and I run into this word Asher. That's one of the sons of Israel. And they just say it means that. And everybody, when they're born in the Bible, they always tell why they named them. It gives you a definition. And God comes from Gad, and it's the God to pray to when you need help, when you can't figure it out. And Allah, comes from the knowledge to bind, Allah is something when you say when you figured out something tricky. God is when something took you all day long that you didn't think it was going to take you 15 minutes to do. That's you say, oh God. But as I was looking into Asher here, I figured out that I started learning the Bible pretty well because I remembered it was Genesis 30 when this happened. And it starts at 39, and it's the birth of Gad and Asher. And I remember how this had started, and Leah said, well, how fortunate, God. And so she called his name God, And so every word in the Bible is defined except the Allah. And I had to look that up, and found out they say it means trees, and it means just things, and it's the knowledge of all. It has several different meanings. But GD is where your word good comes from. It's the God of good, and it's for your own good. We didn't tell you Satan wrote the Bible for your own good. Just read your King James. But it's the Allah, the God of these wonders. Allah, knowledge, bind of life, power to bind of life, a creator God. And they turned into nothing here. And then, when it come time for Asher, and said, Leah, I am happy. You say, it's be in the Asher right here. I am happy, for will call me blessed. And you see the Asher here again, except now it's 2 SASESEHR. So it's a little confusing which Asher means, happy or blessed. Therefore call his name Asher. And so it's the most common name in the Bible. They say they talk about Joseph most of the Bible, or Jacob or Israel, but Asher way outweighs them. They just ignore it, but it's Asher. And they say it means who, or things, or this, or these. And the same thing they'll say about Allah. It just means these. Asher is that. And it's like they're just cutting out a big part of the happiness of the Bible they didn't want you to know. Because I am happy in Asher, for I will call his name Asher. And so I was reading into this, I read on down. I remember it talks about Reuben and the mandrakes in here. And I got to looking at these old mandrakes, and it's the DUUDAYS, the DAYS, days. And I looked on into that, and this is the only word in the Bible that will have DAY in it, is mandrakes, DAY. There's no other words except these seven days. Comes up 7 times, and all these words will have the DAY in them. This is DAY, DAY, DAYS, DAYS, DAY, and 5 of them are here, and then one of them's in Songs, and one of them's here in Jeremiah, and they'll just go ahead and say it means baskets here because they couldn't fit mandrakes in. But yeah, that's your 7 days, the name of the 7 days I've run into here. And so, the word day backwards is Yod, Y-A-D. That's the hand. The hand is telling you what day it is. The Yod is the day. But I'm going to read on to that later. I got it pulled off and studied it all. I'm trying to get it figured out and pinned down to its 5 days. But I want to finish this movie out reading you this rated R story about when Reuben went to get the mandrakes and what Leah actually did say about the mandrakes to her sister Rachel. And so a better ancient English reading is, why I'll craven in by my fixer it this. Who James? James is kind of like the word Jones. Somebody's Jones in there, they're craving. But who James is one who's craving the kingship. James means the one next in line to be king. Why James a do a days. Invest side wive. It's all less. A-E-E-S, less. It's all less. A move it to moral. All less ting. All L-E-S-T-T-N-I. All listing. No limb did to a day in bank. No limb. The limb of the tree. And Rachel wasn't having any children. She wasn't getting a limb of the tree. Then no L-I-M, the limb did, 2 D's, did, and then two U's, to a day in bank. In bank. You know, you want to have a son with the king. And so this is the rated R part here. But she said to her, it's a small matter that you have taken away my husband. And would you take away also the mandrakes of my son? And said Rachel, therefore he will lie with you tonight for mandrakes of your son. But what it says is, what too morally the moth. You know, a moth was the smallest constellation. It means something small. And what too morally the moth. Fuck it, take, QCH, the fuck it, QCHT, the fuck it, take. You have taken away my husband. You know, the morally, the little, the moth, fuck it, take a tazy, fuck it, take a tazy. So that's what the name she's made up to call her sister for screwing her husband. The moth, the little fuck it, take a tazy. Will fuck it goes at did to a day. In Ben what to moral, liken, you shackin', omic. You know, you shackin' omic, so she's making fun of her, you know, you shack, and I said last movie, the shacks are of the moon. You know, the moon's in a different shack every night. The moon's a whore. What a moral lacking, a shacking omic. And omic, you know, I say it means the study of, you know, like economics, the study of the economy. And what a moral lacking, you know, lacking morals, you shacking omic, you shacking study. You know, so it's, you know, the moon goes in shacks every night, and the sun goes in houses and stays there for a whole month. And Venus rides in sheds, you know, and what to moral lacking, you shack and omic. Lilith, it did to a day, you know, a different shack every day. And bank. Wife, jock, and men is side and orbit tax. Less of frata, what to morally it taboo. Gives suckers critique. In bed to a day in Ben. Who is shackin' omic in Belial hua. And so to wife, you know, the WIQH is to wife, and that's the act of connecting two things together. And this is a wife, and this actually means, when you read this backwards, it's the same word they'll say as husband. Husband is the same as this, you know, AB, or the father, ABIV would be the father. And so being it starts with an A, you know, that reads both ways when you run into it. And sometimes it says abiv, and sometimes it says wife. But a WIVA, the husband. Your wife a jockin'. You know, jock is somebody playing ball. Your wife jockin'. Men is side. You know, aside is to kill. Like suicide, yourself to kill, you know, and genocide, to kill the whole generation. And so the menacide, you know, and she's a menace, and she's killing all the men. The wife a jock in menacide. Of an orbit. An orbit, you means you keep coming around. In orbit, tax that cost. All is of a frat. All is of a frat too. To talking to all of them, you know, in orbit, tax, less of frata. You know, it's coming around, and it only costs a less, LES, a less of a frat, and just a little talking to, and let's get to doing what we do best. What to moral it taboo. Taboo, the things you ain't supposed to be doing. You know, they don't even want you to know what that means. Everybody knows what taboo means. To give us a sucker's critique, you know. Sucky is worldwide. No matter where you are in the world, you get off the boat, you tell the cab driver, I'm looking for some sucky. He knows where to bring you. You know, and to give the suckers the critique. Let them all have a shot at it to critique it. In the bed to a day, in to bees, in bed to a day, you know, just one day and on off to the next shack. In Ben, B-N, and then B-N-I, Ben, like B-E-N, in that period of time. In Ben, who a shack in Amic, into the shack and studying, you know, in a one-nighter and study. A Belial hua, you know, Belial, the devil, Belial. You shack and Amic, Belial hua. So Leah, you know, she was a little bit more upset with her sister than what they was letting on. So the entire Bible reads like this. It's poets constantly ragging and funniest shit you ever read that they don't want you to know. Have you ever heard of somebody call a girl your Menacide? You know, this is long forgotten. But I've seen I got some new viewers. If you're new, you know, there's a link at the end here, and it's the one that says begin here is a first on it. And it's the best place to start because I've been making these movies for about 6 years, and I've just been showing how I've been learning, you know. And so all the old ones, you know, I could learn most out of them. But my more recent movies are more accurate. I've learned a lot lately. The more I learn, the faster I'm learning now. I'm learning these marks a lot and a lot of their tricks. So if you're new here, and you're interested, click on that link that says start, and it's the best place.
Don't forget, I won't forget.
Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.